Have you ever stepped off stage with your heart racing and your mind buzzing with ideas only to feel a strange emptiness settle in right after? Maybe you delivered your message with fire, clarity, and intent. People nodded, applauded. Some even said it was inspiring. But deep down, you knew you didn't say what you really wanted to say. The words that would have made the difference were there somewhere. But they just didn't come. It's frustrating, isn't it? How can someone who thinks clearly still struggle to speak clearly? The truth is, being tongue-minus isn't about intelligence. It's about training. Speaking isn't just about transferring thoughts, it's a craft, an art, a muscle that needs consistent sharpening. And here's the good news: clarity, presence, and eloquence are skills you can build. Just like a Stoic trains the mind for resilience, you can train your voice for persuasion. In this episode, I'm going to share 5 powerful techniques that transform my ability to speak fluently, confidently, and without hesitation. They're grounded not just in speech science, but in ancient Stoic wisdom. Because the way we speak is a reflection of how we think. And how we think is what we become. If you stay until the end, you'll walk away with a practical blueprint to elevate your communication one word at a time. Let's begin where all mastery begins, with the mindset. Imagine your vocabulary as a tool. There are the 2,000 words you use daily, your surface vocabulary. Then, there's a treasure chest beneath the 30,000 words you know but rarely use, your deep vocabulary. And just like a craftsman can't build a cathedral with only a hammer and nails, you can't build compelling speech with a narrow set of words. Here's what Stoicism teaches us: you don't rise to the level of your potential. You fall to the level of your training. Every time you reach for a word, your brain defaults to the familiar. That's not laziness, it's efficiency. But if you never stretch it, it never expands. So what do? You sharpen it. You practice. You deliberately lift words from your deep vocabulary and pull them into the light until they become part of your natural speech. Research from Yale shows it takes around 38 uses in varied contexts for a word to move from passive memory to active fluency. And each time you use a richer, more precise word, you're not just decorating your sentence. You're deepening your expression. You're learning to see the world more vividly and share that vision. Epictetus said, "First learn the meaning of what you say, and then speak." That's the essence of articulacy. Not just sounding smart, but being precise. Being intentional. Being present. Here's a small shift with a big payoff. Stop saying delicious. Start saying zesty, earthy, velvety, smoky. Don't just say the sunset was beautiful. Say it was a warm blend of amber and rose, fading into indigo. Practice those words. Say them aloud. Write them down. Use them in texts, emails, even casual chats. And at first, yes, it'll feel awkward, like speaking a new language. But over time, it becomes second nature. This is emotional mastery in action. You're not reacting. You're choosing. Choosing the words that best serve your thoughts. Choosing clarity over comfort. Choosing growth over repetition. If this message moved you, share it with someone who needs it. Let me tell you a story. I once watched a speaker freeze mid-sentence during a high-stakes speech. His mind blanked. The words vanished. But instead of panicking, he paused, breathed, collected himself, looked up, and then he continued. Calm, clear, deliberate. That pause, it was his power. Because here's the second truth. Silence is not your enemy. It's your ally. In the Stoic tradition, silence is sacred. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Nowhere you can go is more peaceful than your own soul, especially if you have inner dialogue that is straight and just." When you pause before speaking, you're not stalling. You're giving your words weight. You're showing confidence not just in what you're about to say, but in who you are. Think about a symphony. The silence between notes is what gives the music its rhythm. In speaking, pauses are punctuation. They guide attention. They create suspense. They allow impact to land. So next time you're tempted to fill the air with nervous chatter, pause. Let silence hold space for meaning. It's not about talking more. It's about saying just enough. And when you can stand in silence without flinching, you embody the very heart of Stoic control. You govern your tongue. You don't let it govern you. Now let's talk about the subtle enemy that creeps into almost every conversation. You know it well. It sounds like filler words. They seem harmless as little pauses to help us think, right? But in truth, they dilute your message. They chip away at your credibility. They make powerful ideas sound unsure. And worst of all, they tell your brain it's okay not to be ready. In Stoic philosophy, every action should be intentional. Nothing accidental, nothing unconscious. Seneca reminds us, silence is a lesson learned from the many sufferings of life. And in that silence, you find clarity. So what do filler words represent? They're not silence. They're noise. They're attempts to cover up our uncertainty rather than sit with it. Here's the truth: the moment before you speak is sacred. That's where your real power lies, not in rushing to say something, but in choosing what not to say. Next time you're about to say, do this instead. Pause. Breathe. Let the silence hold you. And when you're ready, speak with intention. It might feel slow at first. That's okay. Slow is smooth. And smooth becomes fast. When you remove filler words, you create a vacuum that only clarity can fill. Each word becomes sharp, deliberate, and grounded in thought. And that's what audiences respond to certainty. Even in casual conversation, you can practice this. Don't rush to answer. Let there be a moment. A beat. This pause not only helps you gather your thoughts, it signals to others that you take language seriously. That your words matter. Steve Jobs used this to brilliant effect. He paused often, sometimes for full seconds before delivering his next point. That space created anticipation. It told the audience what comes next is important. And here's what the Stoics would say. Control of speech begins with control of thought. Control of thought begins with control of breath. And control of breath? It begins with stillness. So next time you feel the urge to speak, quickly don't. Close your lips. Feel the silence. Let your words gather like arrows, drawn back slowly and then release them with purpose. This brings us to the third pillar of powerful speaking. Input shapes output. You cannot speak well if you don't hear well. And you cannot hear well if your world is flooded with noise. Let me ask you this. What are you feeding your mind every day? Is it clickbait? Sensationalism? Gossip? Or is it wisdom, clarity, precision? Imagine language as a reservoir. Every podcast, every conversation, every article you consume pours into that reservoir. And then, when it's your turn to speak, you draw from that same pool. If you fill it with trash, don't be surprised when your words feel shallow. But if you curate what you absorb, rich literature, timeless philosophy, elegant dialogue, you give yourself a foundation of eloquence to stand on. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts." And your thoughts are dyed by the words you hear every day. So take inventory. Cut out the linguistic pollution. Choose deliberate, thoughtful sources. Read meditations. Listen to Viktor Frankl. Watch speakers who speak with weight. And just like the Stoics, train daily in virtue, train daily in language. Make it a habit. 15 minutes each day of consuming high-minus quality ideas. Not just for entertainment, but for enrichment. Because when your inputs are wise, your outputs become unforgettable. And now, let's move to a different kind of training, the one that most people overlook. Your voice itself. Your voice is not just a tool, it's an instrument. And like any instrument, it needs tuning. Flat tone? People tune out. But a voice with rhythm, melody, and purpose? That captivates. Every rise and fall, every pause, every emphasis tells a story. And stories, when well told, change lives. Read poetry aloud. Practice varying your volume. Speak slowly, then fast. Go soft, then firm. Think of your voice as music. And you're the composer. The Stoics remind us we are responsible for what we practice. And the voice, like virtue, demands repetition. If you want to be heard, not just listen to train your voice. Record yourself. Listen back. Notice your habits. Where do you fade? Where do you rush? Then refine. Sharpen. Strengthen. This isn't about sounding impressive. It's about being clear, being authentic, being deliberate. Because every word you say is a reflection of your inner world. So ask yourself, is my voice rushed or thoughtful? Is it hesitant or grounded? Is it forgettable or does it resonate? Remember, Stoicism isn't about suppressing emotion. It's about channeling it. When your voice is well minus tuned, it doesn't hide your emotion, it guides it. It tells your audience, I care. I've thought this through. And I'm here to serve. So take this seriously. Not because you want to perform, but because you want to connect. Let's get real for a moment. No matter how much we learn about vocabulary, tone, or silence, there's one thing that can still sabotage our speaking. Emotion, nerves, insecurity, self-minus doubt. That tremor in the voice, that mental blank in the middle of a sentence, it doesn't come from lack of knowledge. It comes from lack of inner command. And this is where Stoicism shines brightest. Epictetus said, it's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. That includes how you react to discomfort while speaking. Because let's be honest, speaking is vulnerable. You're exposing your thoughts. You're risking judgment. And if your sense of worth depends on how people respond, you'll always be at the mercy of their approval. But the Stoic says detach from the outcome. Focus on the action. When I started speaking publicly, my greatest fear was forgetting my lines. It was the silence afterward. What if they don't react? What if they look bored? What if I fail? But over time, I learned something radical. Your job is not to entertain. Your job is to express truth clearly, calmly, and without apology. The Stoics weren't trying to impress anyone. They were trying to live in alignment with reason. That same principle applies to your speech. You don't need to sound perfect. You need to be present. You don't need approval. You need clarity. And you don't need to eliminate fear. You need to act despite it. So when anxiety comes, don't resist it. Welcome it. Smile at it. Let it pass through you without defining you. Your words are not for everyone and they're not supposed to be. Speak for those who are ready to hear. And for those who aren't, let them pass like clouds. Marcus Aurelius wrote, you have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. So speak from that place of strength. Not the kind that shouts, but the kind that stands still in the face of doubt. Here's a practice you can start today. Before every speaking moment, pause. Take one breath in, one breath out. And ask yourself, what do I want to give, not what do I want to get? That tiny shift from getting approval to giving value changes everything. It takes the pressure off. It puts your focus back on service. And when you speak to serve, not to perform, people feel it. Now let's talk about something even deeper. Identity. Many people say, I'm just not a good speaker. As if eloquence is a genetic trait. As if it's something you're either born with or forever lacking. But here's the truth. Articulate people are not born that way. They're built. Through trial. Through repetition. Through conscious effort. And behind that effort lies a decision. To stop identifying as someone who can't. And start becoming someone who chooses. The Stoics didn't believe in fixed identity. They believed in action. In becoming. Seneca said, we suffer more in imagination than in reality, and nowhere is that more true than in how we view ourselves. So let me ask you, what if every time you said, I'm bad at speaking, your brain believed you a little more? And what if starting today you said, I'm becoming a powerful speaker? That one change would shift your posture, your tone, your energy. Words are not just tools, they're mirrors. They reflect your belief system. So choose them wisely, especially when you speak to yourself. That's why your practice must begin with inner language. Not what you say to others, but what you whisper in your own mind. Because the most important audience you'll ever speak to is you. So say it with me. In becoming a calm, clear, and confident speaker, I don't chase perfection, I train for progress. Repeat it often. Let it sink in. Let it shape your self-minus concept like water shapes stone. Now let's bring this back to the body, because speaking isn't just mental. It's physical. Your breath, your posture, your presence. All of them signal something before you ever say a word. Stoic training wasn't just mental, it was embodied. They walked with intention, stood with dignity, spoke with composure, because they believed the body and the soul were linked in virtue. So here's a challenge. Before your next conversation or presentation, do this. Stand tall, shoulders relaxed, feet grounded. Inhale deeply. Let the breath expand your ribcage. Hold it for a moment. Then exhale slowly, completely. This tells your nervous system you are safe. You are steady. Now speak not from your throat, but from your core. And when the fear creeps in, remember it's just noise. Your job is to return to rhythm, to breath, to stillness. Every great speaker has felt nervous. What sets them apart isn't that they avoid the fear, but that they keep speaking anyway. The Stoics would say courage is not the absence of fear, but acting rightly despite it. So don't wait to feel ready. Start speaking now. Even if your voice trembles, even if the words come slow, even if you stumble, because every sentence is one step closer to mastery. Let's explore one of the most overlooked foundations of great speaking. Your environment. Not just the physical space around you, but the linguistic atmosphere you live in. Most people don't realize it, but the words we speak are shaped by the words we consume. And if we surround ourselves with lazy language, vulgar expressions, or shallow conversation, we begin to absorb those patterns without even noticing. Think about it. Would a sculptor ever choose to work with dull tools? Would a musician play from broken sheet music? So why do we, as speakers, try to build eloquence on a diet of TikTok clips, angry comment sections, and passive noise? The Stoics thought that we become what we repeatedly do. And in language, that means we become the speech we surround ourselves with. Marcus Aurelius warned, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. And your thoughts are dyed by your words. Let's break that down. Every time you watch, listen, or read something, you're exposing your subconscious to a rhythm of language. If you listen to gossip, you begin to mimic judgment. If you read only headlines, your ideas shrink to sound bites. If you spend your day surrounded by slang and sarcasm, your internal monologue starts to echo the same tone. But here's the good news. You can reverse it. Starting now, take inventory of your inputs. What do you read each morning? What do you listen to on your commute? What conversations do you keep returning to? Now ask, do these elevate my speech or erode it? You don't need to become a monk, but you do need to become a curator. Treat your attention like sacred ground. Only allow words in that build, nourish, and refine your expression. Here's a simple practice. Each day, set aside 15 minutes to absorb high-minus integrity language. It could be Marcus Aurelius Meditations, or Viktor Frankl L.S. Mann's Search for Meaning, or even a TED talk from someone you admire not just for what they say, but how they say it. Notice their tone, their pacing, their choice of words. Let their clarity imprint itself on your mind. Because language, like character, is formed in layers. And each layer comes from exposure and repetition. Epictetus said, first say to yourself what you would be, and then do what you have to do. So if you want to be an articulate speaker, first immerse yourself in articulate speech. And yes, it will take time. But slowly, the words you admire will become the words you use. The tone you study will become the tone you embody. And the quality of your speech will rise not by accident, but by design. Let's go deeper. Have you ever caught yourself saying something and immediately regretted how it sounded? Maybe it was the message, it was the delivery. Too blunt, too rushed, too vague. That's where we come to the next Stoic tool for mastery. Self-minus Stoic. Seneca said, "Each day I examine myself. What did I do well? Where did I falter? How can I improve tomorrow?" You can apply this exact practice to your speaking. It's simple but powerful. Here's how it works. After each important conversation, take 5 minutes to reflect. Ask yourself, did I speak with clarity? Did I overuse any filler words? Did I pause when needed or rush? Did I truly listen or just wait to reply? You don't need to judge yourself harshly. This isn't about shame, it's about sharpening. Growth doesn't come from perfection. It comes from awareness. Record yourself speaking. Play it back. Notice your habits. Listen for patterns. Most of us hate the sound of our own voice, not because it's bad, but because it reveals. But revelation is the beginning of mastery. Don't avoid it. Embrace it. Because when you know where you stand, you know where to step next. And every small improvement compounds. One less today. One better metaphor tomorrow. One deeper pause next week. That's how fluency is built, not in leaps, but in layers. So ask yourself, what part of your speech can you improve by just 1% this week? Maybe it's slowing down. Maybe it's using richer vocabulary. Maybe it's listening more deeply. Choose one. Practice it daily. And like the Stoics, document your process. Not to show off, but to show up for your growth. Because when you take responsibility for your voice, you claim ownership of your influence. Remember, speech isn't just sound, it's impact. And impact is earned through reflection, repetition, and refinement. And now, let's return to something we touched on earlier, but from a new angle. The voice. Not as a tool, not as an instrument, but as a signature. Your voice, its cadence, texture, and rhythm is one of the most personal things you own. It's the sound of your soul. The way your thoughts become real. The way your presence enters a room. And yet, so many people neglect it. They speak too softly, afraid of being heard. Or too loudly, afraid of being ignored. They mumble, stumble, and retreat not because they lack words, but because they lack rust in their own voice. But here's the Stoic truth. Your voice is a choice, a reflection of your courage, your presence, your decision to be seen and heard not for applause, but for truth. And like any craft, it can be honed, read aloud each day. Vary your tone, practice pauses, record poetry, test speeches, speak to the mirror. This is not vanity, it's training. Because how you sound shapes how people listen. And the more you listen to yourself, the more aligned you become. Not just in speech, but in self. Let's begin with a powerful truth. You don't need more words. You need more mastery. In a world where everyone is speaking online in meetings, across dinner tables, the rarest thing isn't volume. It's clarity. It's conviction. It's the voice that doesn't shout, but pierces through noise because it's precise, measured, and real. And that level of speaking begins with something deeper than technique. It begins with self-minus governance. Epictetus said, "No man is free who is not master of himself." And speech is the ultimate test of self-minus mastery. Because when emotions are high, when nerves take over, when opinions clash, it's your speech that reveals whether you are ruled by reaction or guided by reason. Let's be honest. How many times have we said something we didn't mean just to fill a gap? Or responded too quickly because silence felt unbearable? Or fumbled over our own words because we weren't trying to impress? The Stoics offer an alternative path. They teach us to pause before we speak. To ask, is this true? Is it necessary? Is it kind? Not just as a moral filter, but as a guide to powerful communication. Because the most articulate people aren't just good with words. They're clear in their intentions. They don't speak to dominate. They speak to align, to connect, to bring clarity, not confusion. So before you say anything important, check your sting. Is your mind calm? Is your breath steady? Is your purpose pure? That's the foundation of impactful speech. Here's a practical tool. The next time you enter a conversation, silently repeat to yourself, I speak to understand, not to impress. Feel how that changes your energy. Suddenly, you're not trying to win. You're trying to connect. You're not rushing to respond. You're listening deeply. And when you finally speak, your words will carry the weight of real presence. Seneca said, as is a tale, so is life. Not how long it is, but how good it is what matters. The same applies to your speech. Not how many words you use, but how true they are. How aligned they are with who you are. How much integrity lives inside each syllable. Let me tell you a story. There was a young man, bright, passionate, full of ideas. But every time he opened his mouth to speak in public, something strange happened. His voice shook. His ideas scattered. His confidence disappeared. He read books, practiced speeches, took courses, but nothing changed until he changed his approach. One day, he asked himself, what if the goal isn't to perform, but to serve? That question changed everything. He stopped trying to sound smart. He stopped worrying about mistakes. He stopped performing. Instead, he started asking, who am I helping with this message? How can I make this idea simpler, not fancier? How can I make my words loud? Over time, his tone shifted. His words became clearer. And people began listening not because he was perfect, but because he was authentic. That man was me. And what I learned is this. Speaking isn't a performance. It's a gift. When you speak from the heart, aligned with your values, with no need to impress people, feel it. You don't have to speak loudly to be heard. You don't have to use big words to be respected. You just have to mean what you say. And say it with care. This is where Stoicism becomes your secret weapon. Because when you study the Stoics, you begin to realize it's not about removing emotion. It's about mastering it. It's about becoming the kind of person whose very presence calms a room, sharpens a conversation, elevates a moment. That's not charisma. That's character. And that kind of speaking doesn't come from memorizing scripts. It comes from living your message. So ask yourself, what do I stand for? What truths do I carry? What values do I want my words to reflect? Let your speech become an extension of your inner life. And suddenly, you're not just speaking, you're embodying your message. You're not just fluent. You're powerful. Because you're aligned. Here's one more shift that will help. Speak as if every word could echo in someone's memory forever. Not with pressure, but with presence. When you view your speech this way, every conversation becomes sacred. Every sentence a sculpture. Every pause a moment of reverence. And this changes you. You start listening more carefully. You stop wasting words. You begin treating language like a sacred craft. And slowly, almost without noticing, people lean in when you speak. They quote your words back to you. They say things like, I needed to hear that. Not because you spoke perfectly, but because you spoke with soul. And that, my friend, is the Stoic way. Now let's talk about rhythm. Because even if your words are clear, even if your message is powerful, how you deliver it shapes how it lands. This is the difference between noise and music. Between a list of facts and a message that resonates long after you stop speaking. Your delivery is what gives your words life. And at the heart of delivery lies rhythm, the subtle dance between pace, pause, and emphasis. Let's break it down. Have you ever noticed how great speakers breathe with their audience? They speed up when energy builds. They slow down when something matters. They pause not to search for words, but to let meaning settle. That's rhythm. And rhythm is a language of its own. Seneca wrote, speech, if it aims to be powerful, must be carefully modulated. And in today's terms, that means we don't just speak in sentences. We speak in sound waves. Here's what that means for you. Don't trust your message. Let it breathe. Instead of cramming ideas into every sentence, ask, where can I slow down? Where can I pause? Where can I emphasize a key word, not by shouting but by softening my tone? Think of your voice like a musical instrument. Volume, tone, pacing, these are your notes. Use them to guide the listener, not overwhelm them. Here's a simple technique to practice. Pick a single sentence. Now say it 3 ways. Fast and flat. Slow with rising tone. Varying pace and volume, like you're telling a secret that grows into a revelation. Feel the difference. That's the power of rhythm. It doesn't just make you sound better, it makes you feel more present. And presence is magnetic. When you speak with rhythm, you're no longer rushing to finish, you're inviting people to journey with you. But rhythm doesn't come from trying to sound perfect. It comes from being in sync with your breath, your body, your intention. So next time you speak, especially in a high-minus stakes setting, try this. Before your first word, exhale completely. Then begin your sentence on the next inhale, allowing your breath to carry your message, not just your voice. This grounds your rhythm. It steadies your tone. It makes your speech feel alive. And that's what people remember, not just your words, but the feeling behind them. Because people don't just hear content. They feel cadence. And in that cadence, they feel you. Let's go even deeper. Rhythm is not just about sound. It's about intention. When you speak rhythmically, you're declaring, I am not rushing. I am not trying to impress. I am here, fully present, and I trust my message to unfold. That's the Stoic mindset in action. Marcus Aurelius said, if it is not right, do not do it. If it is not true, do not say it. He could have added, and if it is true, say it with care. Rhythm teaches you that care. It forces you to slow down and feel your message before delivering it. Here's a personal story. Years ago, I gave a talk that meant the world to me. I had rehearsed every word. I knew it inside and out. But when I stood on stage, something shifted. Instead of reciting, I let go. I let each sentence land. I let silence speak. I felt the weight of every phrase as I spoke it. And what happened next surprised me. People cried. They nodded. They stayed silent long after I finished. Not because the message was new, but because the delivery made them feel it. That's what rhythm does. It turns ideas into experience. So if you want to move people, don't just write better scripts. Live inside your message. Breathe with it. Pace it. Respect it. That's how your words move from information to transformation. Let's now connect this to something crucial. Practice. Because rhythm, like any art, requires rehearsal. You cannot access mastery by thinking about it. You must train your voice like a craftsperson trains their hands. Here's a ritual I use. Each morning, I read one paragraph aloud. Slowly. With rhythm. With pauses. Then I repeat it, this time faster. Then once more, softer. I play with tone. I stretch the vowels. I compress the consonants. Not to sound dramatic, but to sound alive. You can do this too with poetry, scripture, essays, or your own journal entries. Every day you train, you etch new patterns into your vocal memory. You stretch your range. You develop instinct. You build trust with your own voice. And that trust? It's what carries you when nerves strike. Because the truth is, you won't always feel confident. But when you've trained your rhythm, it carries you like a tide. You don't need to think. You just need to trust what's already in you. That's the beauty of practice. It turns conscious effort into unconscious grace. And that's what separates ordinary speakers from unforgettable ones. Let's take a moment to talk about something that often gets ignored. The relationship between thinking and speaking. We tend to treat them as separate. First we think, then we speak. But in truth, they're deeply intertwined. Speaking is not the end of thinking. It's the continuation. Your words are the visible shape of your invisible thoughts. And this means something important. If your thinking is foggy, your speaking will be unclear. But if your mind is still, your speech can shine. The Stoics understood this. Marcus Aurelius didn't just train his mouth to be wise, he trained his mind to be ordered. That's why his words and meditations still ring clear thousands of years later. He wrote, "The things you think about determine the quality of your mind." So here's the insight. To become articulate, don't start with language. Start with thought. And to sharpen your thought, you must cultivate stillness, not emptiness. Stillness. That quiet inner space where your thoughts aren't racing, they're arriving. Where your emotions aren't driving, they're observed. This is why journaling, reflection, and solitude are so crucial, not just for life, but for speech. Because when you take time to think slowly, you give yourself the gift of clarity. And clarity is the birthplace of eloquence. Epictetus said, "If you wish to be a writer, write." He'll add this: "If you wish to speak with power, think deliberately." Here's a practice that changed the way I communicate. Each morning, before any words leave my lips, I sit in silence. 5 minutes. No phone. No noise. Just breath and thought. And in that space, I ask one question. What truth do I need to hold today? Some days, the answer is courage. Some days it's patience. Other days, it's compassion. But that truth becomes my compass. And because I've named it, I can speak from it. Try this tomorrow. You'll be amazed how one quiet reflection changes your tone for the whole day. Because your voice doesn't just carry words. It carries intent. And people can feel the difference between noise and truth. Let's take this further. There's a beautiful principle in Stoicism. Everything we do is practice for something greater. When you speak, whether to a crowd or to a friend, you're practicing leadership. You're shaping culture. You're remodeling emotional clarity. So the question becomes, what kind of speech are you rehearsing each day? Is it rushed? Defensive? Scattered? Or is it present? Thoughtful? Aligned? Speech is never just talking. It's self-minded expression in real time. And every moment you speak, you're retraining your mind to either reflect chaos or reflect order. That's why the Stoics emphasized inner order before outer eloquence. Because the mouth simply follows the mind. If your thoughts are resentful, your tone will sting. If your thoughts are fearful, your voice will shake. If your thoughts are grounded, you'll sound like a mountain. So here's the challenge. Don't just rehearse what you'll say. Rehearse how you'll think before you speak. Ask, is this coming from ego or clarity? Is this from fear or service? Is this a reaction or a response? The more you ask, the sharper your awareness becomes. And awareness over time becomes precision. Let me share a quick story. I once had a conversation where I was accused unfairly. My first impulse? Defend. Prove. Push back. But something in me paused. I remembered you always have the power to choose your response. So I took a breath. I listened. I waited. And then I asked one question: can you help me understand where that's coming from? That one sentence shifted everything. The tone softened. The tension dissolved. And we moved from conflict to clarity. Not because I had the perfect words, but because I had the right mindset. And that's what Stoic communication really is. Not polished, not rehearsed, but disciplined and deliberate. So don't just seek to sound wise. Seek to become wise. And let your speech be the overflow. Here's another practice. Throughout the day, pause after each conversation and reflect. What did I say well? Where did I lose my center? What can I try differently next time? This simple debrief transforms daily dialogue into daily training. And slowly, without needing a stage, a script, or applause, you begin to feel a shift. You interrupt less. You listen more. You choose silence over sarcasm. And when you speak, it lands. Because it's not about being articulate. It's about being anchored. Anchored in your values. Anchored in truth. Anchored in the space between thought and speech where clarity lives. That's where real expression begins. Now let's pull back the curtain on something most people never talk about. The invisible energy inside your words. It's not just what you say. It's not even just how you say it. It's who you are when you say it. Because your words carry the weight of your being. They echo the state of your spirit. If you're distracted, people feel it. If you're anxious, your voice tightens. If you're insincere, your tone betrays you no matter how polished your phrasing may be. But when you speak from presence, from purpose, from peace, your words land with power. Even if they're simple. Even if they're few. This is why the Stoics placed such a high value on alignment. They didn't aim to sound wise. They aimed to live wisely so that their words naturally carried weight. Seneca wrote, "What you do speak so loudly, I cannot hear what you say." The reverse is also true. When your life speaks clearly, your words don't need to shout. Let that sink in. So here's a radical shift in your approach to speech. Stop trying to be impressive. Start trying to be in tune. In tune with your values. In tune with the moment. In tune with the truth of what needs to be said. From that place, even one sentence spoken slowly, calmly, sincerely can open hearts. I once witnessed this in a small support group. A woman was sharing about a deep loss. Everyone else was offering advice, trying to help. Then one man leaned forward and said quietly, "I don't have the right words, but I want you to know him here. Fully." That was it. No perfect metaphor. No rehearsed comfort. Just presence, spoken clearly. And she broke down in tears, not from pain, but from relief. That's the kind of speech we forget in a world obsessed with content. Because we chase eloquence, but people crave connection. So here's the practice. Before you speak, ask yourself not just what do I want to say, but what energy do I want to give? Because speech is an offering, and the energy behind it shapes how it's received. This brings us to another truth. Speech is not performance. It's participation. You are not just a voice speaking into space. You are one half of a sacred exchange. Your words invite a response, not always verbal, but always energetic. And that response completes the communication. So treat every conversation like a shared experience, not a solo act. Listen with your whole body. Pause with reverence. Speak as if every word is a seed you're planting, not just for today, but for the long memory of someone's heart. Because people rarely remember everything you said, but they always remember how they felt in your presence. This is why tone matters. Why rhythm matters. Why silence matters. They're not ornaments to decorate your message. They are the message. When you speak in a soft, grounded tone, you create safety. When you pause, you create space for reflection. When you choose your words carefully, you model integrity. And slowly, you become the kind of person whose voice doesn't just from it transforms. Let's turn inward again. Ask yourself, when do I feel most aligned while speaking? What situations knock me off minus center? Who am I trying to prove something to and why? Awareness of these patterns gives you leverage. Because the more you understand your inner noise, the more you can choose outer clarity. Remember, you can't get peace through speech if you carry war inside your mind. That's why the real work begins before you speak. Through journaling, through silence, through the honest, daily discipline of asking, what am I serving with my words today? Because every conversation is an opportunity to either escalate noise or restore order. The Stoics didn't speak much, but when they did, they chose each word like it mattered. Let that be your motto. And when you slip, as we all do, don't shame yourself. Return to the breath, to stillness, to the calm place inside you that needs no approval. That's your true voice. And from there, anything you say becomes meaningful. Not because it's grand, but because it's true. And truth, when spoken from peace, always finds its way to the heart. Let's talk about something most people don't connect with speaking. But once you understand it, everything changes. Courage. We often think of courage as something loud, explosive, storming into battle, standing up to injustice, leaping into the unknown. But there's another kind of courage. A quieter one. One that doesn't shout, but still shakes the world. It's the courage to be seen. as you are, with your thoughts laid bare, your voice trembling but true, to speak clearly in a world that rewards noise, to choose presence over performance, meaning over momentum that requires a deeper kind of bravery. Because here's the reality most won't admit. Speaking well is not just a skill. It's an exposure. Every time you open your mouth, you reveal something. Your thinking, your preparation, your beliefs, sometimes even your fears. And that's why so many people stay silent. Not because they don't have ideas, but because they fear what those ideas might say about them. Will they sound stupid? Will they be misunderstood? Will people laugh, interrupt, ignore? The mind races with imaginary scenarios. But Stoicism offers us a different lens. Epictetus reminds us it is not things themselves that disturb us, but our opinions about them. The fear isn't in the speaking itself. The fear is in the meaning we attach to the possibility of being misunderstood. But what if you release that? What if you stopped trying to be flawless and started focusing on being faithful to what you know, what you feel, and what you believe is worth saying? That's real courage. To show up, speak up, and stay steady even when the voice inside whispers, "You're not ready." Because here's the deeper truth. You'll never feel fully ready. Not for the conversations that matter. Not for the words that carry weight. And that's okay. Marcus Aurelius, who ruled an empire and battled internal storms of doubt, wrote, "You have power over your mind, not outside events. Realize this, and you will find strength. Apply that to speech. You may not control the audience, their reactions, their silence, their misunderstanding. But you do control your preparation, your intention, your presence, your response. And when you root your voice in what you can control, you become unshakable." Let's bring this down to practice. Picture this. You're in a meeting. All eyes turn to you. You've prepared your point, but your mouth feels dry. Your heart races. In that moment, you have two choices. Rush. Number. Shrink. Pause. Breathe. Ground yourself. And speak not to impress, but to contribute. That pause is where power lies. And that breath? It's not just oxygen. It's a signal to your nervous system I'm safe. I'm grounded. I choose to show up. Now imagine stacking that kind of moment one after another, day after day. Every time you choose presence over panic, you rewire your nervous system. You tell yourself, I don't need to be perfect to be powerful. This is where speaking and Stoicism meet. Because in Stoic thought, virtue is not about achievement. It's about character. And character is revealed not in comfort but in pressure. How do you speak when things go wrong? How do you respond when interrupted, misunderstood, or challenged? That's the real test. Anyone can sound good when everything flows. But it's in the stumble, the silence, the unexpected moment that your foundation is revealed. So here's a mindset shift for your next big speaking moment. Don't aim to sound perfect. Aim to stay grounded no matter what happens. Because from that groundedness comes the most powerful quality of all. Credibility. In a world full of polished scripts and flashy performances, people are starving for something real. Not perfect glamour. Not vocabulary fireworks. But presence. Honesty. Humility. And when your words come from that place, you don't just speak, you build trust. That's what makes people lean in. Not your eloquence, but your energy. Not your technique, but your truth. Let's turn now to a concept most overlook: emotional clarity. Have you noticed that most miscommunication doesn't happen because people don't know what to say? It happens because they don't know what they feel. You've been there. Trying to articulate frustration but ending up sounding aggressive. Trying to express sadness but sounding cold. Trying to say I need help but saying I'm fine. Why? Because emotional clarity must come before verbal clarity. You cannot speak clearly until you feel clearly. And that's where journaling, reflection, and internal honesty come in. Before you have that important conversation, ask yourself, what do I actually feel right now? What is beneath this emotion? What do I want to be heard or healed? This inner work is not extra. It's essential. Because when you've named your emotion, you no longer speak from it. You speak through it. Calmly. Clearly. Powerfully. That's emotional maturity. And emotional maturity is the soul of powerful speech. Let's be even more specific. Here are 5 questions I ask myself before any important talk, conversation, or moment of expression. What am I trying to communicate, not just in words, but in energy? What is the simplest, most sincere way I can say this? Where might fear be hiding inside my message? Who am I serving by speaking up? How do I want the listener to feel when I'm done? That last one is key. Because ultimately, people don't remember all your words. They remember the space you created inside them. Were they uplifted? Grounded? Challenged? Seen? You shape that not just with information, but with intention. So speak intentionally. Let every word be part of a deeper atmosphere you're rebuilding. A climate of trust, calm, and insight. And know this. Your voice is not small. It's sacred. It's a vessel of thought, of presence, of soul. Don't crush it. Don't perform it. Don't shrink it. Train it. Trust it. And when the moment comes, stand inside it. Let your speaking become not just a tool, but a practice. A ritual of becoming. A rhythm of service. Because when your speech becomes a reflection of your deepest values, you won't need applause. You won't fear silence. You won't chase eloquence. You will simply speak. And your words will land like steady rain. Gentle. Strong. Enduring. Let's take a step deeper. We've talked about vocabulary, rhythm, presence, courage. But beneath all of it, there's a single thread that runs through every articulate speaker I've ever met. That thread is self minus respect. Because how you speak isn't just a matter of language. It's a reflection of how deeply you value your own mind. Let me explain. When you respect your thoughts, you slow them down before offering them to the world. When you respect your listener, you choose words that honor their attention. And when you respect truth, you don't speak to dominate. You speak to illuminate. Self-minus respect changes everything about how we speak. It affects your tone, your pacing, even your choice of silence. But here's the catch. Most people confuse self-minus respect with performance. They think being articulate means being impressive. It doesn't. Articulation is not about being impressive. It's about being integrated. That means your thoughts, your words, your values, your voice, they align. No pretending. No polishing. No posturing. Just clarity. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Never esteem anything as of advantage to you that will make you break your word or lose yourself minus respect." Let that guide how you speak. Don't say things to impress the room. Say what's true. Don't mimic a tone that isn't yours. Speak in your own voice, even if it shakes. Because the more aligned you are inside, the clearer you become outside. That's why the most powerful speakers aren't always the loudest. They're the ones who own their voice fully, gently, consistently. Let me offer a practice here. Every week, take 10 minutes and answer this question in your journal. What part of my voice am I hiding? Maybe it's honesty. Maybe it's vulnerability. Maybe it's quiet authority. Maybe it's joy. Ask and wait. You'll be surprised what surfaces. We often hide our most powerful tones not because they're weak, but because they're real. And real is risky. But the Stoic path doesn't avoid risk. It accepts discomfort as the forge of strength. So if speaking from your heart feels scary, it's probably exactly what you need to practice. Let's turn now to something beautifully overlooked. The speech you have when no one's around. Because believe it or not, the most important conversations in your life happen in silence. They happen inside your head. And those conversations, they shape every word that comes out of your mouth. Seneca said, "A good character, when established, becomes a kind of silent eloquence." What does that mean? It means if your internal speech is scattered, self-minded, critical, anxious, your external speech will carry that shadow. But if your inner dialogue is kind, ordered, courageous, your outer voice will carry calm and conviction. So the question becomes, how do you speak to yourself when you're alone? That's not a fluffy question. That's a foundational one. Let's get practical. Next time you mess up a sentence, forget a word, or stumble in a conversation, what does your mind say? Do you whisper, "You're so dumb"? You always do this. Or do you breathe, smile, and say, "Good"? Let's learn. That difference is subtle, but it's the difference between shrinking and growing. The Stoics trained this mental tone constantly. They rehearsed kindness to themselves not as indulgence, but as discipline, because only a steady mind can carry a steady voice. That's why journaling matters. Why quiet time matters. Why reading the words of wise people Marcus, Epictetus, Seneca matters. They model inner speech that is strong without harshness, clear without arrogance, accountable without shame. And when you soak your mind in that tone, your own speech begins to reflect it. People will say, "You have such a calming presence." But it won't be because of your voice alone. It will be because of the inner clarity you've cultivated. Let's go even deeper. One of the most powerful speaking exercises I know is this. Speak to yourself aloud in a tone you would use with someone you love. Try it. Look in the mirror and say, "You've come so far. Let's slow down. You're not behind. You're in the middle. That didn't go perfectly, but we're learning. You're allowed to pause, to breathe, to begin again." Sounds strange? Maybe. But so is criticizing yourself out loud, and we do that all the time. The point is, you cannot expect your voice to sound strong and steady in public if your private tone is brutal and scattered. Your public voice is simply the echo of your internal home. And this brings us to the essence of it all. Your voice is not a tool. It's a sanctuary. A place where thoughts take form, where intentions meet expression, where presence becomes practice. It deserves to be tended, not perfected, but respected. Don't use it carelessly. Don't silence it out of fear. Don't inflate it with ego. Just stand inside it, as you are, clear, calm, courageous. And remember, you don't need to sound like anyone else. You don't need to say more than is needed. You don't need to rush, impress, prove. You only need to mean what you say and say what you mean with love and discipline. That's what Stoicism teaches us. Not how to speak more, but how to speak with meaning, with intention, with self-minded possession. Because in the end, the greatest power of speech is not persuasion. It's presence. To be here, to be real, to be steady in a world that's always rushing. And when your voice becomes an anchor, not a performance, that's when people start to lean in, not to hear you, but to feel you. By now, you've come to see this journey isn't about public speaking. It's not even just about communication. It's about inner alignment. Because when you truly master your voice, you're mastering much more than sound. You're mastering the way you show up in the world, the way you hold space, the way you carry thoughts, the way you guide energy, both yours and others. But let's go even further. Let's talk about the legacy of speech. Because here's the truth. Your words don't disappear. They echo. They plant. They linger. A single sentence you said 5 years ago might still be living inside someone's mind, helping them through hard days, holding them steady, or hurting them. That's why the Stoics were so cautious with their words. They knew language shapes the world, and more importantly, it shapes the soul. Marcus Aurelius journaled not to be quoted, but to train the voice inside his own head. He didn't write to be remembered. He wrote to remember himself, his values, his purpose, his duty. And that's the invitation for all of us. Not to speak more, but to speak with meaning that outlives the moment. Think about that the next time you're about to reply to someone in anger. Think about it before you post, before you gossip, before you explain just to be right. Because words are not neutral. They either heal or harm, elevate or erode. They either pull people toward clarity or push them into confusion. And once they're spoken, you can't take them back. Seneca said, "Speech that's honest must also be weighed. Truth without wisdom is cruelty." So how do we weigh our speech? Let's begin here. Speak less often, but more deeply. Don't be quick to react. Be quick to understand. Let your silence stretch long enough to test your motives. Ask, am I saying this to serve or to soothe my ego? Am I speaking to express or to control? Do these words build bridges or burn them? That kind of speech doesn't come from cleverness. It comes from humility. And here's the paradox. The more you slow down your speech, the more powerful your voice becomes. Why? Because you're not just sending out words, you're sending out intention. Let's bring this home with something practical. Create a personal speaking code, a handful of principles that guide how you communicate. Here's mine. I speak only what I've thought through. I pause more than I rush. I never use words to wound. I choose honesty over comfort, but never without compassion. I aim not to be impressive, but to be clear, steady, and kind. Every time I'm about to walk into a high-minded stakes conversation, I recall that list. I breathe it in. I let it govern my tone, my pacing, my posture. It's not a script. It's a standard. That's what Stoicism gives us. Not formulas for what to say, but principles for how to live. And when you live by principle, your speech naturally follows. You don't need to rehearse. You don't need to manipulate. You just embody and let your words echo who you are. Let's now talk about a deeply underappreciated art. Listening. Most people think eloquence is about speaking well. But that's only half the story. The other half, the quieter half, is how you receive language. Epictetus reminds us we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we may listen twice as much as we speak. Why? Because listening trains your empathy. And empathy makes your words more accurate. It lets you tune into what really needs to be said rather than what your ego wants to say. So before you speak next time, do this. Let the other person finish. Wait 3 seconds. And only then begin. Why? Because those 3 seconds are where truth gathers. Where intention finds its footing. Where reaction turns into reflection. In a world that's rushing, reactive, overstimulated, pausing is a revolution. It tells the other person, I hear you. I respect you. And am choosing my words with care. That kind of listening transforms not just conversations but relationships. You become the kind of person others trust. Not because you talk well, but because you listen well, respond wisely, and speak only when the words are rooted in stillness. Let's zoom out one last time. What does all of this add up to? All the journaling, all the practice, all the pausing, all the mid-enforcements, all the honest reflection. It adds up to this. You become someone whose speech is inseparable from their spirit. Not two separate things. Not a mask you wear. But one integrated voice, calm, kind, commanding. Your voice becomes a mirror of your character. Your presence becomes a sanctuary for others. And your words become weightless and weighty, all at once like wisdom carried on the wind. And here's the most beautiful part. This transformation isn't loud. You don't need a stage. You don't need a title. You don't need followers or fancy phrases. You only need your breath, your values, and the discipline to show up again and again. To speak not with performance but with presence. Not to impress but to align. Not to manipulate but to serve. Because that, in the end, is the highest art of speaking. To say what matters, how it matters when it truly matters. So here we are. After all the lessons, techniques, reflections, and stories, what remains? What is the final message behind everything we've explored about becoming articulate? It's simple. Your voice is a reflection of your discipline, your clarity, and your heart. And like all powerful things, it deserves to be crafted with care. You now know that fluency is not about speaking more. It's about speaking with purpose. It's about mastering your mind, honoring your values, and aligning your intention with your tone. you know that being articulate is not just a gift. It's a practice, a habit formed slowly, mindfully, daily. It's built when you expand your vocabulary not to sound smarter, but to express your full self. Eliminate filler words not to be perfect, but to respect your listener's attention. Tune your vocal rhythm not to perform, but to connect. Reflect between sentences not to stall, but to serve truth. Listen twice as much as you speak, not because you're Ian Shore, but because you're wise. And finally, speak only what aligns with the kind of person you're becoming. That's what it means to be articulate, not just with words, but with your whole life. Because your voice is not separate from your actions. It is an extension of your integrity. It's the sound of your soul navigating the world. And yes, it will sometimes tremble, sometimes falter, sometimes stumble. But if you stay grounded, stay humble, and keep showing up, you will find a rhythm, a strength, a resonance. Because the greatest speakers are not those who control every word, but those who speak with presence and peace. Let me tell you one final story. There's a concept in Japanese pottery called kintsugi, the art of repairing broken ceramics with gold. The idea is instead of hiding the cracks, you highlight them. You honor the history. The flaw becomes part of the beauty. That's your voice. You may have missteps, awkward moments, words you wish you could take back. But with each one you learn, you refine, you deepen your awareness. And slowly those imperfections become part of your voice's story, part of its richness, part of its quiet power. Because what people remember is not flawless execution. They remember your essence. Were you sincere? Were you present? Were you generous with your truth? If yes, then your words have done their work. So, what now? Now you practice. You return to the page, to silence, to observation. You watch how others speak. You write what moves you. You listen to yourself not just for errors but for intention. And slowly, over days and weeks and months, your voice becomes something you trust, something you return to, something that reflects who you truly are. And perhaps one day, someone will save you. They don't speak often, but when they do, you listen. That is the art of Stoic speaking. Not noise, not perfection, but quiet power forged in self-minus awareness. Let's end here with a reminder from Marcus Aurelius. Waste no more time arguing what a good man should be. Be one. In the same way, waste no more time trying to sound articulate. Be someone whose words come from clarity, character, and care. Because when you speak from that place, you won't just be understood. You'll be remembered. And more importantly, you'll be aligned. So step forward now. Not as a performer, not as a speaker, but as someone who chooses every word the way a craftsman chooses their tools. Not to impress, but to build something that lasts. Your presence, your impact, your voice, all of it practiced, patient, powerful. Start today. One conversation, one sentence, one pause. That's all it takes. And from that moment on, your voice will no longer be a mystery. It will be your signature. Your soul, spoken. If this journey moved you, share it. Speak it. Live it. The world doesn't need more noise. It needs voices of depth, of peace, of purpose. Let yours be one of them.